First contact at sea. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Constellation, her eyes scanning the vast Pacific waters stretching endlessly before her. The carrier strike group's routine patrol had been uneventful until now. That changed when Lieutenant Commander James Park's voice cut through the quiet morning. Captain, AEGS is tracking multiple objects descending from high orbit. They're massive. Rodriguez turned to the tactical display, maintaining her composure even as her pulse quickened. The objects, each larger than her carrier, were arranging themselves in a perfect geometric pattern above the strike group. Their metallic surfaces rippled like liquid mercury in the morning sun. Sound General Quarters. Bring the strike group to Condition 2. Let's not appear hostile, but I want our birds ready to fly. Her orders carried across the bridge with practiced calm. Klaxons blared throughout the massive vessel as sailors rushed to their battle stations. The alien vessels, there was no point pretending they were anything else, settled into a holding pattern at 40,000 feet. Their formation was unlike anything Rodriguez had seen in her 20 years of service. The objects seemed to defy gravity itself, hovering without any visible means of propulsion. The first transmission came on all frequencies, bypassing their encryption as if it didn't exist. Vessels of Earth, this is High Commander Xyrex of the Galactic Confederation Survey Fleet. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact. Before Rodriguez could respond, a second transmission followed. Query: why do you position your military vessels in such a volatile environment? Our scans indicate these are combat craft, yet you deliberately expose them to corrosive substances and unstable weather patterns. Rodriguez exchanged glances with her XO, Commander Sarah Chen. The aliens didn't understand why humans would build warships to operate on water. A slight smile tugged at her lips. Galactic Confederation vessel, this is Captain Rodriguez of the United States Navy. We welcome peaceful contact. What you're observing is Carrier Strike Group 3. Conducting routine maritime operations. The oceans are humanity's oldest highways and oldest battlegrounds. There was a long pause. The Mercury-like ships shifted slightly, their surfaces rippling as if in response to their occupants' confusion. Captain Rodriguez, High Commander Xyrex's voice carried a note of what might have been fascination. Your species deliberately developed military doctrine around operating in liquid water. That's correct, Commander. Would you like a demonstration of our capabilities? As if on cue, a squadron of F-35s roared off the Constellation's deck, climbing rapidly through the morning sky. The alien vessels actually moved back slightly, their formation adjusting as they tracked the fighter's ascent. Fascinating, Xyrex transmitted. Your vessels launch atmospheric craft from a moving water platform with remarkable precision. Yet our scans indicate this is primitive technology by our standards. Rodriguez smiled fully now. With respect, Commander, sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. We've been mastering naval warfare for thousands of years. The oceans taught us lessons your species may never have needed to learn. Such as, Xyrex's curiosity was evident even through the translation. The value of patience. The importance of three-dimensional thinking. The ability to operate in an environment that can be either your greatest ally or your deadliest enemy. Rodriguez paused, then added, and those are just the lessons we learned on the surface. There are more. Commander Xyrex, what do you know about submarines? The confusion in the alien's response was almost palpable. Submersible vessels. In combat. Rodriguez glanced at her tactical display, noting the position of the U.S. Washington, a Virginia-class submarine currently running silent somewhere beneath them. The aliens hadn't even noticed its presence. Perhaps we should continue this discussion over dinner, Commander. I'd be honored to host you aboard the Constellation. We have much to teach each other. As she watched the alien vessels adjust their formation again, Rodriguez couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity might not have faster-than-light travel or gravity manipulation, but they had turned Earth's oceans into something no alien species had ever imagined. a three-dimensional battlefield where strategy and skill often mattered more than raw technology. The first contact between humanity and the Galactic Confederation would be remembered not for any show of advanced technology, but for the moment when aliens learned that sometimes the most impressive capabilities aren't the ones you can see. The Silent Hunters. High Commander Xyrex stood in the constellation's Combat Information Center, his Mercury-like form reflecting the soft blue glow of tactical displays. The demonstration had been going for 3 hours, and still, the alien commander couldn't hide his growing agitation. Impossible, he stated for the third time. Your tracking systems must be malfunctioning. Captain Rodriguez maintained her diplomatic smile. I assure you, Commander, the U.S. Washington is exactly where we say it is. Your sensors simply can't detect her. The alien's surface rippled with what the humans had learned to recognize as frustration. His survey fleet's most advanced detection systems, capable of tracking dust particles in planetary rings, couldn't locate a primitive human submarine hiding less than 5 kilometers from their position. How? The question carried genuine bewilderment. How does a vessel powered by nuclear fission remain undetected by quantum resonance scanners? Commander Chen stepped forward, bringing up a holographic display of ocean thermal layers. The answer lies in understanding our environment, Commander. The ocean isn't empty space. It's a complex, ever-changing medium of varying temperatures, salinities, and biological activity. She gestured to the layers. These thermal boundaries, thermoclines, reflect and distort sonar. Skilled submariners can hide in these layers, becoming virtually invisible to both acoustic and electronic detection. But surely nuclear radiation can be shielded, Rodriguez interrupted gently. We've had decades to perfect these techniques. Our submarines can remain submerged for months, carrying enough firepower to level continents, yet stay undetected even from ships directly overhead. Xyrex's form solidified slightly, a sign of intense focus. They'd learned. Months. Underwater. With a crew. The longest submerged patrol on record was 124 days, Chen added. Though our newer vessels could theoretically stay down longer if needed. A new voice crackled over the command center speakers. Station keeping at ordered depth, Captain. Ready for Phase 2 demonstration. Rodriguez smiled. That's Captain Morgan from the Washington. Would you like to observe how we hunt submarines, Commander? Xyrex's surface swirled with patterns they'd come to recognize as excitement. You can detect your own vessels when our sensors cannot. Better than that. We can fight effectively underwater. It's an art we've been perfecting since World War I. The ocean is our jungle, Commander. We learned to be both predator and prey. The next 2 hours transformed Xyrex's understanding of human military capabilities. They watched as the Washington engaged in a mock battle with another submarine, the U.S. Seawolf. Both vessels maneuvered through thermal layers, using ocean currents and marine life to mask their movements. They demonstrated active and passive sonar techniques, showing how humans had turned simple sound waves into a sophisticated detection and combat system. Remarkable, Xyrex finally admitted. Your species took what we would consider a hostile environment and turned it into a tactical advantage. But surely such vessels are vulnerable once detected. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Chen before responding. Commander, would you like to know where the Seawolf is right now? Your display shows it returning to port. That's what we want everyone to think. Captain Wells, if you would. A new voice filled the room. From a speaker directly behind Xyrex. Seawolf, surfacing to periscope depth, aft of alien flagship. Xyrex's form actually lost cohesion for a moment, droplets of his mercury-like substance spattering the deck. The Seawolf had been trailing his command ship for the past hour, completely undetected. How many? He asked quietly. How many of these submarines does your species maintain? Rodriguez's expression remained carefully neutral. That information is classified, Commander. But I'll tell you this. At any given moment, somewhere in Earth's oceans, Our submarines are running silent, running deep, ready to defend our world or strike back against any aggressor. A deterrent force that cannot be detected or neutralized. Cyrex mused, hidden in an environment we never considered militarizing. His surface patterns shifted to what they now recognized as respect. Perhaps, Captain, we should revise our assessment of Earth's military capabilities. Perhaps you should, Rodriguez agreed. But more importantly, perhaps we should discuss how our different approaches to warfare might complement each other. After all, space is just another ocean, with its own thermal layers, radiation fields, and hiding places. As if to emphasize her point, a third submarine surfaced, one that hadn't been mentioned in any briefing or shown on any display. Cyrex watched in stunned silence as the massive Ohio-class vessel broke the surface less than a kilometer from his fleet. The lesson was clear. Humanity might not have mastered faster-than-light travel, but they had perfected the art of warfare in one of the most challenging environments imaginable, and they were ready to apply those lessons to the stars. War games. Admiral Cyrex had made what he now realized was a serious tactical error, a simple training exercise. He had called it a friendly competition between our technologies. Now, standing in the Confederation flagship's command center, he watched as another one of his superior vessels was theoretically destroyed by human naval forces. Exercise kill confirmed, came the calm voice of Captain Sarah Chen from the U.S. Valiant, a destroyer that had just successfully evaded and countered an alien patrol ship's attack run. Your vessel would have been disabled by our missile spread, Commander. The war games had been running for 3 days, and the results were increasingly humbling for the Confederation forces. What started as a demonstration had turned into a masterclass in human naval warfare. How? Demanded Sub-Commander Crix, their most experienced tactical officer. Their vessels are confined to the water surface. They have no gravitational controls, no faster-than-light sensors. We should be dominating these exercises. That's precisely why you're losing, came a new voice. Captain James Morrison of the Australian submarine HMAS Wombat had surfaced his vessel just long enough to make the transmission. You're fighting like Space Navy. We're fighting like a Sea Navy. The difference was becoming painfully clear. The Confederation ships, accustomed to the empty void of space, tried to apply the same tactics to Earth's oceans. They thought in 2 dimensions, relied heavily on advanced sensors, and expected their superior technology to prevail. The humans, by contrast, used every aspect of their environment as a weapon. Their vessels moved in 3 dimensions, even the surface ships understanding how to use wave patterns and weather conditions to tactical advantage. They coordinated attacks using multiple domains, surface, air, and undersea, in ways that confused and overwhelmed the alien defenders. New contact, Crix announced suddenly. Multiple surface vessels approaching from bearing 047. Cyrex studied the tactical display. A group of smaller human vessels, what they called a destroyer squadron, was approaching in an unusual formation. Their electronic signatures were clear and obvious. Too obvious. It's a trap, he realized aloud. But where? The answer came in the form of multiple torpedo launches from completely different vectors. While they'd focused on the obvious surface threat, 3 submarines had maneuvered into attack positions. In a real battle, his ship would have been destroyed before even detecting the actual threat. Exercise concluded, announced the Human Command Center. Final tallies are being calculated. The numbers were staggering. Over 3 days of simulated combat, the human forces had destroyed 14 Confederation vessels, while losing only 3 of their own. More importantly, they had demonstrated warfare concepts that had never occurred to spacefaring races. Your submarines, Cyrex mused later during the debriefing, they don't just hunt. They're your strategic deterrent, aren't they? Hidden weapons that ensure no enemy can ever launch a successful first strike. Admiral Chen nodded. The oceans taught us patience, Commander. They taught us to think in layers, to use stealth not just as a tactic, but as a strategic doctrine. Every surface ship you see is just the tip of the iceberg. And now you're adapting these concepts for space warfare, Kyrex concluded. The implications were significant. Humanity wasn't just developing space combat capabilities. They were bringing centuries of naval warfare experience to the stars. The War Games' final demonstration drove this point home dramatically. The humans launched what they called a coordinated multi-domain strike. Surface ships, aircraft, and submarines struck simultaneously from multiple vectors, using the environment itself as both weapon and shield. The Confederation's advanced sensors and weapons proved nearly useless against opponents who could vanish into thermal layers or hide behind the curvature of the Earth itself. "We've been fighting the wrong war," Crix admitted afterward. "All our technological advantages, and we never considered how to fight in a medium we can't fully control." "That's humanity's greatest strength," Chen replied. "We didn't develop in the sterile environment of space. We learned to fight in the mud, the jungle, and yes, the oceans. Every environment that tried to kill us became another tool in our arsenal." As Cyrex watched the human vessels return to their ports, he drafted a priority message to the Confederation Council. Earth wasn't just another emerging civilization to be mentored or monitored. They were a species that had turned one of their planet's most hostile environments into their greatest military asset. The message was clear: underestimate humans at your own risk. They might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something potentially more valuable: the experience of fighting and winning in conditions that would terrify most spacefaring races. "Admiral Chen," he called out before departing, "I believe it's time we discussed a more formal military alliance. It seems we have much to learn from each other." Chen's smile was diplomatic but carried a hint of pride. "We'd be delighted, Commander. After all, space is just another ocean, and we have centuries of experience in naval warfare to share." The War Games had started as a demonstration. They ended as a revelation. Humanity wasn't just ready for the stars. They were bringing their own unique and formidable style of warfare with them. Ancient ways. The warning came from both human and alien sensors. A massive solar storm was approaching Earth, powerful enough to disable most electronic systems. In high orbit, Commander Xerex watched with growing concern as his fleet's advanced shielding systems began to falter. "All Confederation vessels, engage emergency protocols," he ordered. "Without our shield matrices, we'll be vulnerable to—" "Commander," his science officer interrupted, "the human naval vessels. They're not retreating to port." On the tactical display, the combined human fleet, now including ships from 12 nations, was indeed staying at sea. More surprisingly, they were executing precise maneuvers even as their modern electronic systems began to fail. Aboard the U.S. Constellation, Admiral Chen watched as her crew executed protocols that would have been familiar to sailors from centuries past. Digital displays went dark, replaced by analog instruments. Sailors unfurled massive signal flags, their bright colors sharp against the darkening sky. "All hands, this is the Admiral." Her voice carried across the ship's backup acoustic communication system. "Execute Operation Sextant, just like we've drilled." Across the fleet, navigators pulled out brass sextants and paper charts. Signal lamps flashed in Morse code between ships. Flags rippled in complex patterns that conveyed detailed tactical information. The solar storm might blind their electronics, but humans had sailed and fought at sea long before the invention of radar or GPS. In orbit, Cyrex watched in astonishment. Impossible. How are they maintaining fleet coordination without computer assistance? His answer came as the storm hit full force. While Confederation ships struggled to maintain formation, their advanced systems compromised, the human fleet moved with practiced precision. They were using the wind and waves themselves to maintain position, techniques perfected by sailing ships centuries ago. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting multiple surface vessels approaching our position, but our sensors can't get clear readings through the storm interference." Of course they can't, Xerex realized. They're using the storm as cover. Just like they use ocean thermal layers, these humans, they turn environmental hazards into tactical advantages. The demonstration became even more impressive when a group of Chinese destroyers executed a perfect pincer movement, coordinated entirely through flag signals and light flashes. They had positioned themselves to theoretically launch a devastating attack on the Confederation fleet's weakened defenses. Admiral Chen, HFY transmitted on a backup frequency. How long can your fleet maintain operations under these conditions? Commander, Chen's voice crackled back. We once fought entire wars with nothing but wind power and signal flags. We can keep this up as long as necessary. The next few hours were a revelation. While the Confederation fleet struggled with degraded technology, human vessels demonstrated centuries of accumulated naval wisdom. They used star navigation, depth soundings, and wind patterns. They coordinated complex maneuvers through visual signals and horn blasts. They proved that they didn't just understand their environment. They had mastered it at its most fundamental level. When the storm finally passed, HFY requested an immediate conference with Earth's naval commanders. Your ships, he began, they're not just technological platforms, are they? They're the product of thousands of years of evolution in naval warfare. Chen nodded. Every modern warship carries the lessons learned by countless generations of sailors. We don't just train our crews to use technology. We train them to function without it. Because the sea teaches you that anything that can fail will fail, usually at the worst possible moment. And now you're applying these principles to space warfare. HFY concluded. Not just the technology, but the wisdom, the ability to operate when everything goes wrong. Space is just another ocean, Commander. Chen smiled. Vast, dangerous, and unforgiving of mistakes. We learned long ago that the most reliable technology is the one between your ears. As if to emphasize her point, a submarine surfaced nearby, one that had maintained perfect stealth throughout the entire storm, using nothing but passive sonar and human expertise. The solar storm had done more than disrupt electronics. It had demonstrated that humanity's greatest naval strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to function without it. In a galaxy where most species were utterly dependent on their advanced systems, this was perhaps the most valuable capability of all. A new understanding. The Galactic Confederation Council chamber fell silent as Commander HFY concluded his presentation. The holographic displays showed footage of human naval operations, from carrier strikes to submarine warfare to storm tactics. For many council members, it was their first real understanding of humanity's maritime capabilities. Let me be clear, HFY stated, his mercury-like form reflecting the chamber's soft light. We have severely underestimated Earth's military potential. While we focused on their lack of faster-than-light travel and other advanced technologies, we missed something far more significant. He brought up new footage. Human vessels operating in perfect coordination during the solar storm, using nothing but flags and light signals. Humanity hasn't just adapted to their world's oceans. They've mastered warfare in an environment most species would consider impossible. They don't just fight on the water's surface. They fight above it, below it, and through it, using every aspect of their environment as both weapon and shield. Council member Verana, her crystalline form sparkling with skepticism, interrupted. Surely you're overstating their capabilities. They're still a pre-FTL civilization. With respect, Council member. HFY countered. That classification misses the point. While we were perfecting space travel, humanity was developing something equally valuable. The ability to wage war in 3 dimensions using an environment itself as a weapon. The display shifted to show submarine operations. Their nuclear submarines can remain submerged for months, carrying enough firepower to devastate continents, yet remain undetectable even to our most advanced sensors. They've turned their world's oceans into a strategic defense system that no orbital force could neutralize. And now, he continued, they're adapting these principles to space warfare. Imagine those submarine stealth capabilities applied to space vessels. Imagine their carrier tactics scaled up to orbital operations. Imagine their ability to operate without advanced technology applied to deep space missions. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. The implications were clear. Humanity wasn't just developing space combat capabilities. They were bringing centuries of naval warfare experience to the stars, experience no other species possessed. Admiral Chen, invited to address the council, stepped forward. "The oceans taught us lessons that space-borne civilizations never had to learn," she explained. "We learned to fight in 3 dimensions before we could fly. We learned to use sound as a weapon before we had lasers. We learned to navigate by stars before we could reach them." She gestured to the display showing Earth's oceans. Every wave, every current, every thermal layer taught us something about warfare. We learned patience from long submarine patrols, coordination from fleet operations, and adaptability from storms that could sink the mightiest vessels. But most importantly, she concluded, we learned that technology alone doesn't win wars. It's the combination of technology, training, and tactical doctrine, and the ability to function when technology fails, that determines victory. The Council's final decision was unanimous. Earth would be reclassified as a major military power, despite their technological limitations. More importantly, a new joint naval training program would be established, allowing Confederation forces to learn Earth's maritime warfare principles, while helping humans adapt these principles to space. 6 months later, Cyrex stood on the bridge of a new vessel, a hybrid design combining Confederation technology with human naval doctrine. Around him, human and alien crew members worked together, each learning from the other's strengths. "It's remarkable," his executive officer noted, watching a human navigator plot their course using both AI systems and traditional stellar navigation. "They're not just copying our technology. They're improving it with centuries of naval experience." Cyrex nodded. "That's humanity's greatest strength. They don't just adopt new technologies. They adapt them, integrate them with proven principles. They understand that the most advanced weapon is useless without the doctrine to employ it effectively." As their ship moved through the solar system, practicing maneuvers developed by submarine commanders and adapted for space, Cyrex reflected on how much had changed. The Confederation had expected to find a primitive civilization still struggling to reach the stars. Instead, they found something far more valuable, a species that had mastered warfare in one of the most challenging environments imaginable and was ready to apply those lessons to the final frontier. For as humanity had proved, space was just another ocean, vast, dangerous, and unforgiving. And who better to help explore and defend it than those who had mastered Earth's oceans? The age of human space warfare had begun, and it would be built on foundations laid by countless generations of sailors who had learned to fight on, under, and above the waves of Earth's mighty oceans.